We're going to take an in-depth look into the stereo sub oscillator, and I'm just going to dive right in without really giving much in the way of an introduction. The first thing I want to point out is that the stereo sub oscillator is a free running oscillator. It does not reset its phase upon key on. Right now, I have a triangle wave coming from AL1. It's actually a filtered triangle wave because I wanted to try to mimic the waveform that is being produced by this sub oscillator. It's not really a sine. I guess you could call it a sweet sine. It's got some harmonics, some odd order harmonics. Let's give the dry signal a listen. This is just a filtered triangle wave from AL1. Now let's give the totally wet signal a listen. So in both sounds, you can see that they do carry the same harmonics. There's about 5 of them here. Notice the placement. I'll just crossfade between the dry and the wet. Very similar. Now, to prove that this is a free-running oscillator, notice that when I switch between dry and wet, look at how the waveform changes in the oscilloscope. So it kind of goes over, right? See like a little wave there? Now if I do a key off and then key on again, so we had a similar transformation there. It was, of course, slightly different. Let's try to get a different transformation. Well, that one's similar. Let me get a different one. There we go. Now it's kind of seems to be rotating almost to the right. So that's important to know because when you're using this as a sub oscillator, you want to kind of get, I mean, ideally it would reset its phase every time that its gate opened. And now let me explain a little bit about how this thing works. So it is an envelope follower. This thing only makes noise when whatever you feed it has some sort of energy as far as volume goes. It is not a frequency follower. It's not a pitch follower. So the only thing that this thing needs to know or wants to know in order to open up is volume. It does, however, allow you to control its pitch via Midi Notes. Now, this is a program, so I'm pretty sure the Midi Notes are coming from the global channel. I'm also pretty certain that when you use this plugin in combi mode, you can set the channel, and that would probably be the channel that this thing uses to read MIDI note data to designate its frequency. I haven't tested that out, so I'm not 100% sure, but I would be surprised if it still functioned off of the global MIDI channel in combi mode. But anyway, so it has 2 modes. One is where it does follow, where its pitch is designated by a MIDI note, or the other one is fixed, where its pitch just stays the same no matter what you do. Before I delve into pitch in depth, I want to stay on note fixed for now and just kind of explain a few things about how this thing works. So you have a pre-low pass filter, and this reads the signal going into this unit. It's not filtering the note being produced by this unit. So that's probably easily understood by if I play like a high note on the keyboard, and then if I were to sweep this down, we lose volume at like 40. Now let me play a low note. We start to lose volume at 30. So this is low passing the frequencies that I was putting into it, and then that's making the volume of this respond differently. This works almost like a you could almost think of this like as a volume control if you're dealing with just a single timbre, or you can think of it as like a sidechain filter. That might be a little bit confusing, but basically like if I had just a kick drum and I low pass this, it would make this turn down. It would also make this only read the volume of the low frequency content, that kick drum, in order to open up or close. So yeah, don't think of it as a volume, just think of it as it's kind of like centering what frequencies this is reacting to. So the next is the sensitivity knob. This is just a volume control, straight up. Like that's all that this is. It's a little confusing that it's called sensitivity. I kind of wish that they just called it volume, but maybe they called it sensitivity because when you, I'm not sure where unity gain is in here, but at 100, this sub oscillator will be louder than the volume of whatever you feed it. I can show you that real fast. So right now, let's go to dry. Let me reset my meter on Cubase. So right now my dry sine wave is at 28.2. Let's check my wet sub oscillator. Well, it's actually not technically a sub, but let me explain that in just a second. That's all the way up at 5.8. So yeah, sensitivity is just volume. Something I forgot to explain, when it reads the MIDI note, you don't have to have it play the same MIDI note. In fact, this goes from 0 down to -48, and that's in semitones away from whatever MIDI note you're feeding it. So in other words, you could have it from 1 to 4 octaves down. I'll have it on -12 for now. And I'm going to put the shape on -100. I'll explain what that is in a second. But there's something else that I want to say about how this is just focusing on volume and not focusing on pitch. If I play something polyphonic, let me go to dry, and then just play something high on the keyboard. I'll play a C5 major triad. And then if I go to all the way wet, this thing is monophonic, so it's only picking up one note. Let me just play a C5 by itself. And let me just turn this down because that's kind of obnoxiously loud. So that's the C5 by itself. Here's an E and then a G. If I play all three, we're still only hearing one note. Of course, that note is louder because when I play 3 notes, that has more power than when I play 1 note. So let me play 1 note, 2 note. You hear a volume increase every time I open up another oscillator or play another note, which adds more power to the signal. So it is because it's only following volume, and then its pitch is being designated by the note. Oh, and by the way, it functions by the last note you play. So I'll hold a C, then hit a G, and then let go of the first C, and then go back to the first C. So it's no matter what, it's only playing the last note. It functions like like last mode in the common section. Over here, if you have it on, if I had this on mono and then priority last, that's exactly how this oscillator is functioning, how this sub oscillator is functioning. Yeah, so it works fine with chords. Something like a pitch follower, let me turn this off, go to Cubase, and I have a octaver here, and this is a pitch follower. Let me take off octave 2. Here's the, let me bypass it. Here's the dry sound, and I'll just hit a C. Turn that up. And then this is 1 octave down. And then I'll hit a G. This thing has kind of a lag time. I actually didn't know that. Here's both of them together. But if I were to hit a chord, here's just a C major triad. Now if we focus on this sound, it gets all sorts of messed up because it can't figure out what pitch it is. If you use the pitch follower in the MS-20, it has the same problem. It can only follow monophonic pitch because it doesn't know which fundamental to choose, so it just kind of like scatters and bounces around them. Go ahead and bypass that. So now we can kind of look at, let's look at the other mode that it has, fixed. Fixed is better for like adding a sub to a kick drum. That's the most practical use that I can think of. So I have a kick drum here, and I'll start playing it. And then this when I turn it on, is going to be on all the way wet. So we're going to hear the sub only. And then let's turn this down. So I could set the volume here in the dry wet, or I can set the volume with sensitivity. Doesn't matter. Bypass. And the shape knob controls the loudness and the decay of the oscillator. So when you turn this up, it goes from -100 to +100. When you turn it up, it's going to make the sound louder. It's like increasing the sustain of it, and then it also makes the release tail longer after the sound turns off. So let me actually just turn this wet, and then let's play the kick drum, and then I'll start moving the shape. Oh, and this is not affecting the attack of the sound of the sub oscillator. At this point, it's so long that when it's playing those 16th notes there, it never closes. Where it can close if it's at -100. So there's one more thing that I want to do. I'm actually routing this kick drum. Turn this off. I'm actually routing this kick drum through a stereo multimode filter. And I just want to use the driver here, and then the high pass filter. So I'm really dipping out a lot of lows there. Actually, with the high pass filter on, let me try to give it more lows. And then let's put this back on. You could even high pass it even more. And then give it more volume. It's just a nice trick for separating out the top end and then adding like artificial low end. I actually kind of like keeping the low end in the kick. So I would just move that high pass to 0. Probably move this back down to 30-ish. It just makes them meld easier, since this one's all the way down at 43.5, which is about an F, by the way. I like it more subtle. The default is actually at 20, 80. Actually, let's leave it at 2080 and then put the shape up. It's pretty cool. Let's put the rest of the kit back in. Let's see what this sounds like. Common drum track. Why does that sound so weird? Hold on, let me reset this. I'm doing something wrong. This is so strange. the video is pretty much over, but I don't know why this loop is sounding so weird. Let's see. I'm going into insert effect 1, and then the snare is going into insert effect 3. Of course, I have my insert effect 1 routed to insert effect 2, and then insert effect 3 is dry, so I'm not sending the snare through that or anything. Keep any EXI by accident. What the heck is going on? Let me switch the thing real fast. think I know what the problem is. These aren't going. Okay, it's okay. Very, very strange glitch. I know exactly what's wrong. Right now, these are going out of the left-right channel, whereas this one's going into Cubase, and then it's suffering the latency from Cubase. So I would have to go in and, I guess I could just actually, in my basic vector, just simply route these to the outputs 1 and 2. Cool. So that's it for the stereo sub oscillator. Hopefully this is illuminating. Pretty much just know that it has 2 volume controls. You have 2 different ways of setting the pitch. It's an envelope follower, not a frequency follower. And that's pretty much it. All right, take care.